no mai, haere mai, ko Trish Higginson, tuka wingawa, he kamahi aho e whānau e Whina Plunkett. Welcome to our live chat today. I'm Trish. I'm a Plunkett nurse with Plunkett Line. I've been with Plunkett Line almost 6 years now and very passionate about breastfeeding support, have done some lactation consultant studies and just really want to be there for mama who are going through a breastfeeding journey because support's the biggest thing. So I'll hand you over to Anna who will introduce herself today. Kia ora, Anna.
Kia ora, Trish, and kia ora all who are joining our live feed today. Ko Anna Wilson toko ingoa, and I also work for Plunkett. I am a Wellchild Tamariki Ora nurse here at Plunkett Line, and I'm also a lactation consultant. I have been working in this role for almost 10 years, 10 years next month. So, yeah, it is a joy to be able to provide service and it'd be available to families and be accessible to all of our whānau across New Zealand.
Ngā mihi, Anna. It's so good to have your expertise here today and the awesome mahi you're doing out there for whānau in New Zealand. So today, whānau who are listening, we're going to be talking about the Big Latch On and why it is such a wonderful event. And so the themes for this year's Big Latch On is setting realistic expectations about breastfeeding and the common concerns we hear from breastfeeding parents, and looking at effective ways of tracking growth and development progress and why some commonly used methods can do more hindrance than help. And of course, we'll be talking about the kinds of extra support that are out there for whānau, and especially if you want to chat more about your exact situation and get personalised support. I also want to acknowledge the current weather events across the country that we're experiencing at the moment, encourage people to call Plunkett Line if they're worried or need extra support with Pepe or Tamariki under 5, and also keep up to date and follow advice from civil defence and local councils. Kia ora. So, to get us started, we just want to acknowledge that today is the start of the Big Latch On, a now global event designed to bring people together to celebrate breastfeeding. Many Big Latch On events are happening today. Unfortunately, we heard some have had to be cancelled due to the current weather, but still some going on out there, and maybe some tomorrow as well. And you can check that out on the Women's Health Action website, which our admin team will put into the comments if you need to access that to find where you can go. So something we really wanted to talk about today was setting expectations around what's normal in the world of breastfeeding, keeping in mind that every whānau and every baby, every mama, every breastfeeding diet has its own normal. So Anna, what can you tell us about that?
It's a bit of a can of worms subject, as you can imagine, Trish, because there's, we could talk all day, and you and I know we could talk at length about this topic. But I guess what we start with is essentially a mama and a pepe, and the extended support that the mama and pepe have in that breastfeeding relationship. We call in our lactation consultant world every mama and her pepe, or more than one pepe, we call that a dyad. And even if you have another pepe from the same pod, with the same genetic pool, that dyad is unique and it's evolving and it changes. So your breastfeeding relationship with that baby and your subsequent babies might be actually quite different. And also it's very different between another mum and another baby. Even if you've got a baby of a similar age with someone else down the road, your unique feeding patterns and behaviours with your baby will be unique to you and your baby. Not only around the composition of the breast milk exclusively made for your baby and your pepe, but also just around the nature of your feeding patterns and things like that. So it's really good to remember right from the outset that there's a massive range of normals. So that's kind of really what that means. Your little dyad, your little group, your little unit between yourself and your pepe is very unique and very special. And so it's good not to compare, number one. And feeding patterns and feeding behaviours are very varied and change throughout the breastfeeding relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and other things around that, I guess, early on in the breastfeeding relationships, might we think about, well, what might that look like if we've got this unique diet? Well, in the beginning, in the first few days, you might have longer breastfeeds. And as baby grows and develops, you might have shorter, more effective breastfeeds. You might find sometimes these growth spurts and babies feeding very frequently day and night. You might have a baby who feeds every hour and a half during the day and has some longer stretches of settled periods overnight. You might have a baby who feeds 3 to 4 hourly. We say focus on the feeding and how baby is feeding rather than looking at a clock. Put the clock down, put the timer down. If you want to use an app, sure, but just say baby fed, rather than baby fed for X number of minutes, because that's not the essence of a effective breastfeed. And it might be one marker, but it's not a marker we use. In the lactation world, it's more about how baby's feeding and what baby's actually doing at the breast.
Ka pai. And those feeding patterns do change very frequently, particularly over the first year, don't they, Anna? So a newborn baby will feed small and often, and then as they start to grow and they understand the world, they want to play a bit more and not necessarily need to feed as much. But the breast milk is constantly changing its constitution to be exactly what the baby needs. So as baby grows, breast milk becomes higher in calories and fat, and bigger babies have much more efficient latches, so they'll often get on, have a little drink, then get off again because they want to go and play. So that doesn't mean that anything's wrong with your milk supply. It's just that baby is just feeding on demand, and that really is the essence, isn't it?
Exactly. And we want to always, be mindful that breastfeeding, although it's an experience between a mama and a pepe, there's something that's also supported with her wider support network, and other people in whānau who are understanding what that breastfeeding relationship is looking like. And so, for example, we're talking about normal development and normal developmental changes. And one of the, like said Trish, early on in the first few days after birth, in the first week or two after birth, babies have quite extended times at the breast, or certainly can do. And that will change with time. And so then some people after a while will think, well, something's wrong because baby's not at the breast as often, and or not as there as long, and I've timed it and the time isn't right. And we always say, well, look at other signs that your baby is content and fed. So this might be looking for signs of contentment. And that does not mean your baby's going to be happy and singing and dancing all day long, because babies do cry. That's their method of communication. That's the way they say, I need a cuddle, I need a burp, I need you, I just need my emotional connection with you. I need you to pick me up for whatever reason. But also, as babies grow and develop, yes, they have those things. A cry doesn't necessarily mean you're underfeeding your baby. We always look at what goes in, comes out. Some signs of contentment, some settled periods.
Mm.
And again, you put that in the context of development. Babies at 6 weeks will developmentally cry more than a baby who's 2 weeks old, for example. So again, at 6 weeks of age, when baby's having that witching hour, we often call it, and that fussy period and cluster feeding time, it does not mean that there's necessarily anything wrong. And likewise, as they continue to grow and develop and start finding their hands, and they might be sucking on their fists by around, into that third month of life,
Mm.
developing their really skillful art of bringing their hands up to their mouth. All of these months preceding that, we've said, well, it's feeding cue, and now it no longer is a feeding cue.
Yeah.
It's a developmental normal thing. I'm exploring my world orally, and they will, up until 2 years and beyond, be putting everything into their mouth. So that is a developmental thing that doesn't necessarily say hunger anymore. So it can be confusing for parents at that time, because we often
Mm.
think, I
Mm.
just fed my Pepe. I put Pepe down and now must be hungry. Oh, I've done it wrong. And it's a really, really common time where people kind of either can feel like their confidence is taken away. Everything they knew about their baby and their cues has changed, because babies
Mm.
do change as they grow and develop.
Yes, that's right. And human milk is mammalian specific. So human milk is specifically designed for human babies. It's not like cow's milk, which is casein dominant, so it's trying to grow a fat little calf in the paddock. Human babies need their brains to grow, and I think a really good phrase that I've picked up in my learning is breast milk's designed to grow the brain fast and the body slowly. And the other thing that's important is those parental interactions, eye contact, skin to skin, that whole connectedness and bonding and attachment. It's not just the weight gain, it's not just how much they're growing in that regard, it's their brain development as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know even, sometimes people will express out, for example, some of their milk, and they go, "Look, I was a bit concerned because it looks so watery." And
Mm,
and we talk about like what you said, Trish, around that that the breast milk is the certain parts of the breast milk and certain times of the day that there is a higher ratio of the breast milk lactose. And we hear lactose in the adult world, and we think, avoidance, don't do it. But actually, lactose is, like say, it's part of mammalian milk, and it's perfect. In fact, it's vital for rapid brain growth and development. And we deprive that from our babies, and we will set them back. They need that for their rapid brain growth and development. So they need to have the uptake of that breast milk lactose, which is breast milk sugar, which helps develop the rapidly changing and growing neurological parts of the brain and all of the neural pathways that are still completing their formation as they grow and develop and make all their connections into the world. And so it's really important that we understand that what we see isn't what we get. So if you do look at your breast milk as it changes over time or changes over the course of the day, if you did express for any reason, that don't let that be the judge either. Our breast milk is amazing and perfect and
it really
perfectly
is.
complete. Mm.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we get with breast milk is factors called human oligosaccharides, which line and protect the gut and build up that gut flora, the gut microbiome. Babies are born with an underdeveloped gut, and it's your breast milk that lays down the flora to build up that gut health and also the immunological properties of breast milk. If your baby's unwell, your nipples have sensors that when your baby latches on, find out what the virus is that baby's got and make antibodies according to that. And often when babies are unwell, they'll want to feed a bit more. That's because they need to get that immunological protection and also hydration.
Yeah, it's so unique and special in that way. And it really starts at day dot. I mean, ideally, and we do talk about this, is that, even antenatally, so before you've had your baby, or if you're listening today and you're thinking about, do I breastfeed, or a mama to be, or a whānau who have got a pepe yet to be born and thinking about, what am I thinking about breastfeeding? Certainly we encourage, skin to skin contact and a breastfeed within the first hour of birth. And that would be in the ideal situation for everyone. But certainly you can be talking with your healthcare provider, your LMC. Well, if that's not possible, can I at least have some hand expressed milk to line baby's guts? We talk about that protection, Trish, that you're talking about, lining the gut. Perfect thing to do. And, it's a wonderful thing being able to do that and have that protective property so soon after birth. And that's one of those things that's encouraged and recommended, and actually it's gone on for centuries and sustained us as a human race long before we had
Mm,
the science to back it up. I always talk
absolutely.
to people, but
Mm,
this is what our ancestors were doing under the mango tree. It's just we don't sit down under the mango tree anymore. We're actually usually busy working and doing other things in our lives. But
mm,
those things are really good. So right back to that prenatal time, the antenatal time, and then certainly considering the first hours of birth, wonderful time that you can offer baby that colostrum, that breast milk. And that kind of, I guess, is the other thoughts around that. It's not too early to start thinking about breastfeeding and how can I think about preparing for breastfeeding. And some people from a different age group would associate preparing for breastfeeding as some really old-fashioned things that people used to do, and nipple preparation, but it's more around knowledge and understanding and expectations about what it might look like to
mm,
breastfeed rather than any physical preparation necessarily. However, good thing is if you've got a midwife or someone who's involved in your care, someone seeing your nipples is a helpful thing, that's for sure, because then you can have a discussion if there's any issues around there that might come up.
mm,
But certainly also, Antenatal classes are one thing, but you can also have breastfeeding antenatal classes. In some of the bigger centres around New Zealand and some of the smaller towns, these are offered, and you can ask your LMC, your midwife about those. And also here at Plunket Line, we offer a lactation consultant service that you can call us or book online for, and you can book in antenatally. You don't have to have had your baby already, and we can have a kōrero about things to consider and information sharing around how best to plan and think about breastfeeding a baby.
Absolutely. Yes, it's all about preparation and support and realistic expectations. And on that note, Anna, can you just explain about growth charts? Because we do have these growth charts, and we know that weight is only one measure of growth and development, but it is often given quite a high priority. And every baby's different. If you look at people out there walking down the street, you'll see all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Some are lean, some are short, some are tall. Babies are the same. We're not trying to fatten babies to get them up to the top of the growth chart. So it would be great if you could just
Exactly.
share some information about that, Anna.
Oh, look, exactly. Look, when we hear as parents, growth charts can be really confusing because they use this thing called percentiles. And I don't know about anybody else, but I love getting 100% in something. Love it. Feel like I'm a winner, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's the most lame thing, 100%. You win. So it's not the same with growth charts. So when we hear a percentile and hear our baby sitting on the 50th percentile, we're like, 50th percent. I want to get my baby to the 100th, but it isn't about that. And you'll see if you have a look at them, there are a series of curves for a starter, and there'll be anything from the second percentile up to the 100th percentile. And basically, it's saying that if my baby was sitting on the second percentile, out of 100 babies, that 98 other babies would be above that, just in the general population. It's a very much averaged out approximation. If your baby's sitting a little under or sitting a little higher, what we're really looking at is your baby growing along its own curve, your baby having long, ongoing growth. And also, we do have times because growth isn't just about, like you're saying, Trish, around the weight. There'll be times when we notice the length changing in a baby. So all of a sudden, on the change mat, filling out the change mat more. Oh my gosh, in the car seat, oh my gosh, the head's getting, the feet are coming out. So you'll notice the growth, might be a little, oh, it's not stopped growing, baby isn't stopped growing, but it's a little different. But we'll notice this marked growth in height. So a percentile is not something to aim for. We're not aiming for 100%. It's where our baby is sitting and where our Pepe is plotting along that. And the reason why we do monitor it, it is a wise thing to do, to keep an eye on that, because we do want to see slow but steady growth. We do want to see gains, because that is the nature of baby's growth and development. We should be seeing that, but it is not an expectation that every baby is going to get to 100. It is not that way at all. It's just looking, if you imagine 100 babies, and if your baby sits in one place, how many babies would be above and how many babies below? Often I'll say to parents, what's dad like? What are you like? Are you big people? Like, oh, no, we're not. Or, no, we are. And so their baby might be tracking along the 75th, 80 percentile because you've got a very long, tall, person. You can have several Pepe yourself and find each of your Pepe charts very differently if you were to plot those. And that is also a very normal thing. And it does not mean you're doing anything wrong with your
No.
feeding.
Yeah.
Mm.
And there is rapid weight gain generally after the first 2 weeks. It's very common for babies to lose weight in the first week. And that's because that very first milk is not about nutrition, it's about immunity. And then once your milk comes in, they'll usually reach their birth weight again by 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
then also around 3 to 4 months, you'll often see the weight level off a little bit. That's actually very normal as well. And I'm pleased you mentioned the length, Anna, because often babies will get longer and leaner. And hey, they're becoming more active at that age. They're like
Mm-hmm.
little turtles on the ground, waving their arms and legs, and whereas a newborn baby's not using a lot of calories. So
Mm.
measure your baby against their own progress, not others. They're all different. If we have any questions or pātai, please put them in the comments and our production team will send them through to us. Otherwise, thank you, Ngā mihi nui, for joining us today. Thank you to Anna for sharing her expertise. It's been a wonderful kōrero with you today. and
Thank you,
just
Trish.
carry on reaching out for help. Breastfeeding is a journey that is ongoing, and you know, every peppy, every diet is different.
Thank you, Trish. Yeah,